What's up everyone, Scott the TroutHammer here. Forgive me for, I'm going to be doing this a lot in this video. It's super hot today and it's super hot in my garage and I can't find my fan, but we're back with another top 5 lures video for this channel. I've got a whole playlist of these videos that I've done on this channel. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put the link somewhere up here above my head. So I've been trying to keep these top 5 lure videos very specific to a season, and here it's late summer, early fall, more so early fall, and around the area where I live, that's when the crappie bite really turns on. Being a pan fisherman myself at heart, primarily a pan fisherman, and having a primarily pan fishing audience, I know a lot of people have been asking for this video. They've been emailing me, they've been asking me for this video, so finally, here it is, my top 5 crappie lures. But before we get into the video, I'm asking you guys, please subscribe to the channel, because I'm trying to get this channel to grow to 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to do that. So if you could, please hit the subscribe button down there, notify bell up there, so you're going to be the first to see all the great content that's going to come from this channel. And I'm also doing shout-outs to new subscribers, so if you guys want to get in on that, you know what to do. You guys know what button to press. And along with that, we finally hit 500 subscribers, so making this video now on the 2nd of September, so starting next week is when the giveaways are going to begin. You need to be a subscriber to get in on that, and if you want your name shouted out, subscribe today. Yep, you saw me. There you go, guys. That's a fish. There you go, guys. That's unreal! Oh, this is such an awesome looking fish. Oh, yeah! Alright, guys, check that out. Okay, so before I talk about the lures for crappie, number one, most important thing for crappie, this is going to count across all lures, all facets of crappie fishing, is the gear you use. There's a very specific technique you need to land crappie, because crappie, their nickname is paper mouth. They have the super soft mouth. It's real easy for them to throw a lure. It's real easy for you to pull too hard and you pull the lure right out of the fish's face, or you pull the fish's face off. So the most important thing you need when you are crappie fishing is light gear. And ultralight, probably the best thing you can use, because that rod's going to have a lot of give. It's going to play the fish a lot better, and it's going to make it a lot harder for the fish to break off and get free with an ultralight rod. Alternatively, you can use a light rod. I think the heaviest you'd want to go for crappie is a medium, and even that might be pushing it. Just don't pull too hard. And the technique I always explain to people when you're trying to land crappie, if you know you have a crappie, or if you're at least targeting crappie, gone crappie fishing, is you don't want to jerk the rod up. You don't want to ram the hook home when you pull the hook on a crappie. All you want to do is either reel a little bit faster and maintain tension, or just raise your rod to your opposite shoulder. That's what I always do when I hook into a crappie, is as soon as I feel that bite, I just raise the rod to my opposite shoulder. You won't lose a fish that way. If you don't believe me, there's plenty of other pan fishermen on YouTube that talk about the same thing. I'd say watch some Informative Fisherman's videos. He's the guy I learned that from. So what is a crappie? A crappie is a panfish that sort of looks like a cross between a perch and a bass. They got a big mouth. They're a predatory fish. They love to chase. They love anything that moves. Sometimes if you can just get a hook in the water and move the hook quickly, a crappie's going to strike it. They're aggressive, and they're pathological eaters. So things that move, things that make a lot of noise, things that mimic what they eat, little fish, those are going to be your best tools to use with crappie. Here's a tip though. When you catch a crappie, do this. I've talked about doing this with bass. Do the same thing with crappie, because crappie will eat them. If they have, on the upper part of their jaw, behind the teeth, if they have red stains, that means they're eating crawdad. So that's a clue you could use for matching the hatch on what the crappie you're eating. If you see those red deposits, it means they're probably eating crayfish, crawdads. You could use those for lures also, but mostly they're eating other fish. So my number 5 crappie lure is a mini chatterbait. A mini chatterbait, a micro chatterbait, really any color, any size trailer, any type of trailer. I got a little swim bait on this, but it works the same way it does for bass. It works the same way it does for trout. They love to chase things, they love to hunt things, especially things that vibrate, things that put off flash, and that's everything a chatterbait does. But with chatterbaits, the best way I can describe a chatterbait is they are a safe crankbait. They're pretty weedless, they're hard to lose, they're hard to get hung up, because the way they run through that water, or the way they run through the water, that blade's going to keep stuff off of the hook, and it doesn't like sway outside of the area of influence from that jig head, from that blade on there. But those skirts give this thing a bigger profile on the pause, so that's something if a fish isn't sure, you can give this thing a little pause. Those skirts will flare out, and that could trigger the fish to strike. But that's the biggest thing with crappie, triggering. They are pathological feeders, and they are really, really susceptible to the reaction bite, and this is a reaction lure. Something that comes through, makes a bunch of noise, gets in the fish's face, and they get pissed off, and they hit it because they think it's annoying, and they think it's food. Every reason for a crappie to hit this. I usually fish these things in places that have a current or places that are close to a current, because you get a lot clearer water. You get a lot more of the type of water that a crappie is more willing to chase down something bigger like this. Or if you can go deeper water, you can pull this through grass lines, and that's something that crappie are going to hang out in. They're going to hang out in those brush piles. They're going to hang out around structure, and brush is one of their most favorite structures to hang out around. And this is something that's really great to bring around that brush, because they hear it, and then they suddenly see it, and they just take off for it. My number 4 crappie lure, same thing as the chatterbait, but just a little bit more effective, is a mini Bill Lewis rattle trap. I think, honestly, this might be the #1 panfish hard lure on the market. This is a 1/8 ounce chatterbait. It has tiny hooks. I've got hook caps on there, but it's a lipless crankbait, but it's a small lipless crankbait that has rattles in it, and it does everything the chatterbait does, but this thing can get deeper. This thing can be cast further. You can cover more water with this thing. You know, it's got that classic Bill Lewis fish imitation fish profile. Hookup ratio on it is a lot better because you got those 2 treble hooks versus the 1 big jig hook on the chatterbait. I mean, really, if you haven't fished a Bill Lewis rattle trap, you should. If you haven't fished a mini rattle trap or a micro rattle trap for panfish, you also really should. I mean, I know other fishermen that this is the lure they swear by. This is my number 4 because there's not a lot of areas in the area I live in where I can effectively fish this thing, but this thing's great in lakes, this thing's great in currents, anywhere that has like a stream. Basically clear water. This is your best clear water lure for crappie. My number 3 crappie lure is because it's, you know, the profile, how small it is, it mimics just about everything a crappie eats. This is your numbers lure. This is if you want to catch a lot of numbers of crappie, but you can't catch big crappie on it, is a Trout Magnet. The Trout Magnet, you know, it's going to have that either grub or fish profile, depending on how you rig this thing, depending on how you run it. It can be run under bobber and jig, but this thing is really effective in really shallow water. Anywhere where you can like work this thing slowly, give it twitches, and fit a crappie nibble on that hook, this thing's dynamite. I mean, this is the type of lure where if you're fishing for small crappie, if you're in like a small pond or like a lake where there's, you know, all the juvenile crappie are out and active, like I said, this is where you want. This is the lure you want if you're on a numbers game. If you just want to catch tons of crappie, and the number of colors these things come with, my top most effective colors are chartreuse, white, and green pumpkin watermelon flake. So these are the ones that I use in dirtier water, and this is the one that I use in clean, clear water. Stands out a little bit better. But I've said it before, I know other fishermen have said it before, you know, the Trout Magnet worm really is the Senko of the panfish world. It's the kind of thing where if I go to like Walmart and I see they have Trout Magnets on the shelf, if they have a color I don't have, I don't even think, I just buy them. This is also something you can run under a float. You can sort of bobber and jig this thing. You know, a lot of options with the Trout Magnet, but like I said, if you're on a numbers deal, this is what you want to pick up. Speaking of bobber and jig, it kind of gives away what it is. My number 2 crappie lure is a Marabou Jig. Now this is probably the most classic crappie lure because something about the way those marabou feathers move in the water while this thing is suspended, it drives crappie absolutely berserk. 2 styles I have here, one has actual feathers, one has actual marabou hair in it. Really either one works, but the idea is you put this thing under a float, and depending on what depth you're fishing, and this is something where you can work a lot deeper depth also, that's what you do. You just let it sit there and suspend, and that's something where if it's like really warm water or really cold water where the fish are kind of real lethargic, they're not really willing to chase something down, that's where you pull this thing out because that's what they want. They want the suspended meal, something that's just sitting there almost lifeless. Easy meal for them. But like I said, with the Marabou Jig, the way these feathers sort of like fan out and undulate while this thing's suspended in the water, just dead stick sitting there still. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about predatory fish when they see those little things move. It's like it tells it that it's actually alive. They're so used to seeing little fins move on a fish while it's just sitting there, and if they just see something just not moving, just dead, it's either already not worth eating, or if they see something that has those feathers on it, something that's moving a little bit, that tells them it's alive, still fresh, better meal. And again, across all facets of lures, the color you choose really depends on the color water you're fishing in. I use the white in like nighttime conditions, or if I'm fishing real clear water, and that's where I pull out the chartreuse and orange one if it's dirty water, because the color difference in the dirty water, chartreuse stands out a lot better. Plus, I mean, in our area, chartreuse is a trigger color for just about every fish. Yeah, like I said, definitely the most classic crappie lure is the Marabou Jig under a float. It's my number 2. My number 1, Yeah, you knew it was coming. This is the unofficial 2-inch curly-tailed grub channel of YouTube, but yeah, that's it. My number one crappie lure is a Mr. Twister 2-inch curly-tailed grub on a 1/32 ounce jig head. Now, you guys have watched me fish for crappie. You guys have seen me use a lot of stuff. Nothing I use has caught crappie like this lure has. I mean, caught a lot of other fish too, but I mean, it just seems to be the perfect size, perfect profile, perfect action to trigger those crappie into striking. And, you know, just like the Trout Magnet, you can make this look like a grub, you can make this look like a fish. Slow retrieve will get that tail kicking. You put a crappie nibble on that hook and it doesn't mess with the action of the tail, give it some scent. But I think the best thing about the 2-inch curly tail grub is there's nowhere you can't fish this thing. You can fish these things in lakes, ponds, streams, anywhere that has crappie. That chartreuse color is going to work everywhere. It's going to work in clear water. It's going to work in dirty water. Especially if you put that crappie nibble on there, that scent just gives it one extra thing to get those fish to strike. I mean, yeah, I can't really say enough about it. You guys, watch my library of videos fishing this thing. This is my confidence lure, probably my number one lure, period. But for crappie, definitely my number one. Where this wasn't my number one for trout, not my number one, not even close to my number one for bass. But for panfish and for my favorite panfish to fish for, crappie, this is my number one. So that's it for my top 5 crappie lures video. I hope you guys liked it. If you guys did, could you please leave a like on your way out? But of course, I asked this with all my top 5 lures videos. I want to know what you guys thought down in the comments below. I want to know what your guys' top 5 crappie lures are. I want to start the conversation up. I want to keep this ball rolling. And again, I'm trying to get this channel to grow to 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to do that. So if you could, please hit that subscribe button down there, notify bell up there on your side of the screen. It's going to make you be the first to see all the great content that's going to come from this channel. And again, as I talked about at the start of the video, giving shout outs to new subscribers and giveaways starting next week because we hit 500 subs. So if you want to get in all that, subscribe today. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, tips up, tight lines, and have fun fishing.